Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sensor Plane Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Odell, and as usual, this is where light and technology come together. Well, today is after the holidays. It's a brand new year, 2015, so Happy New Year to everyone. I hope all of you out there had a wonderful holiday with your family and friends, and I hope that maybe you got some new goodies from Santa Claus, Hanukkah, Harry, whoever may visit your household. So with that, today's topic, we're going to do a little unboxing video because I know how much people just seem to love these things. But my recent acquisition from Nikon is in this box here, straight out of the shipping container. So let's take a look at what I've got in this box. Okay, my UPS man just dropped this guy off. This is a Nikon 500mm f4 lens, and just to be fun, I've got my Nikon box cutter. So let's open this box up and see what we can find inside and take a look at this magnificent lens. All right. So I got my packing slip in here. Now I got this lens. I buy all my own equipment. I got this lens from Berger Brothers Camera. They're in Amityville and Syosset, New York, out on Long Island. Now they're Brad Berger, the owner. He's a great guy. They had the best deal on this particular lens by several $100s. So if you're looking for a 500mm lens, call up Brad and he'll hook you up with one of these. They're not cheap, but anytime you can save a couple $100s over the normally advertised price for a guaranteed USA Nikon lens, you do it. So check them out. I got my packing slip, so I'll put these things aside for right now. And the nice folks at Berger Brothers even threw in a microfiber cloth, so that's cool. All right. So the outer box, and then there's that Nikon box inside. So I'm going to have to get this one out. There we go. Now here's the real box. This is what you get instead of a gold box when you buy a big telephoto lens. Here it is, AFS Nikon 500mm f4G ED VR. This is a wonderful lens. Let's take a look at it. I don't know about you guys, but I always save the shipping boxes for my larger lenses, the original boxes. And I do that in case I ever need to ship them back for service, or if I choose to sell the lens, it's nice to know I've got a box that will fit this lens perfectly. So I'm not going to discard any of this cardboard. It's also a good idea, before you go any further, when you open this up, get your warranty card, make sure that's there, go online, fill out the registration card so that your product is registered with Nikon. So this is going to live either in the box of the original lens, like if it's a smaller lens, I'll just keep it in the box, so then if I have it handy, I know exactly where it is, or file this away in your files. Okay, we got the instruction manual here, just easy reading, lots of different languages. We'll save that for a little bit later. And now we have the lens itself, and it is packed, as you can see, in its trunk case. And this trunk case locked, it's got some keys. Let's take this out. And here it is, in its glory, the CT504 Nikon trunk case for the 500mm lens. Now this case, you could use it to pack your lens in if you're traveling a lot by car. This is ideal. It's hard. You can stack things on it. Alternatively, you might want to pack the lens and just save the case for other uses. I probably wouldn't ship a lens in a case like this, that wasn't in another cardboard box, just because it kind of advertises that it might be something expensive in here. But the case is very useful, and it is an included accessory. So we'll just open up the case here and looky see what's inside. Okay. All the original accessories. So we've got a lens strap, and then some more packing material. And then the lens itself is wrapped in plastic. So let's get that off. Okay, I've gone ahead and removed the packaging material from around the lens itself. This is the lens cover. It's kind of like a sock. I used to joke about these. I really don't particularly like them. They're a little bit clunky to use in the field, but it does provide a cover over the hood and the front element. It's nice and soft inside. So there's that. An alternative to this sock is a product made by Aquatech. It's a silicone lens plug. It fits right into your, it's a cover, and it fits right into the front element like a lens cap. It's soft silicone rubber. It won't scratch anything. I've used those in the past with my 600mm lens, and it really makes packing them a little bit easier because you don't have this big sock thing to pull off. But nevertheless, we've got the lens here. And I'm going to pull this out, and it's a little bit fogged up. It's cold outside today in Colorado. It's snowing out there. So my lens is still a little bit cold. And there's some more accessories in here in the trunk. So I'm just going to pull those out from their little compartment and close this up so that we can take a look at this lens. Okay, so here we've got the lens. The lens hood is reversible. It's made out of carbon fiber, so it's rigid and fairly lightweight. There's some more material in there that I'm going to have to remove because normally it's not reflective on the inside. There's some plastic in there. And then we have the lens itself. Now this front element is typically removable. This meniscus, it's clear protective glass. We've got the tripod collar built in with a foot, and that rotates around like this. Just set this down here. The other accessories, there's a monopod foot, so you can swap this foot out for a smaller, low-profile foot if you're going to use this on a dedicated monopod. And then here's the strap that goes for the case itself. So a couple of included accessories with this lens. Let's just take a look at the controls and operation of this 500mm lens. Okay. So here are the controls of the lens itself. Lots of switches on the side and one rotating clutch ring. This rotating ring here is the VR on-off. So if you're in the field, you rotate it from the on position to the off position. There's an indicator here on the side. We've got the distance scale window here, the badge with the serial number of the lens right on it. The distance goes from infinity down to 15 feet, no, it goes down even further. It goes down to about 3.85 meters, so it's about 13 feet. One of the reasons why this is a popular lens is because it does focus much closer than, say, a 600mm lens or an 800mm lens, which might not focus within 18 or 20 feet. And sometimes when you're shooting wildlife, that's a real big consideration, how close you can get. Otherwise, you're going to have to find yourself adding extension tubes to try to focus closer, and that can be a whole mess of problems of its own. There are switches on the side here. We'll go down from top to bottom. The first switch is the focus mode switch. There is the default position is A/M. That's autofocus with full-time manual override. So if you're using this on your Nikon camera and you bump the focus ring, if you turn the focus ring, it's going to disengage the autofocus and engage manual focus. However, with the A/M mode, autofocus is the priority. So if you just nudge this ring a little bit, it's not going to override. There's another position called M/A. That's going to be manual focus priority with autofocus override. So that's going to take priority of input from the focus ring itself, but you can still use autofocus with the camera. And then the third position is just M, that's full-time manual focus. So if you're using any Nikon camera, you put it in M, you don't have to switch to manual focus on the camera body itself. So that can save you a little time in the field. The next switch is the focus range limiter. And there's two positions: full, which is infinity to the closest distance, and then the second position, which is infinity, or 8 meters to infinity. So you'd use the second position, the 8 meters to infinity, for situations where you know you're not going to be focusing on close objects. So it will allow the camera to focus faster because it's not going to rack the lens back and forth. Now on these lenses, I really wish there was a third position, because I do a lot of wildlife work where I don't want the lens to rack out to infinity. I want to keep the focus close. So it certainly would be nice to see a range for something like minimum focus, 4 to say 10 meters. That would be really nice for wildlife photographers, like birds and things, when you're focusing close and you don't want the lens to have to hunt back and forth. You miss a shot that way. Okay, moving on down the line, the VR switch here. Again, it doesn't activate the VR, but this is where we can configure the VR between the standard mode and tripod mode. So in tripod mode, the VR system is tuned to know that you're mostly going to be steady and it's not going to try to overcompensate. Older lenses, older Nikon VR lenses, they always told you to turn VR off when you were on a tripod, because being stable would fool the VR system. It would try to compensate for movement that wasn't there, and it could introduce blurry shots. That doesn't happen on these fancy lenses because we've got tripod mode VR. The next switch is another interesting one that you'll find on a lot of the fancier prime and some of the zoom telephoto Nikkor lenses, and that's the memory switch. There's three different ways. There's some buttons out here, these little buttons on the end of the lens barrel. I don't know if you can see those, but there's a couple of them here. There's actually 4 of them. They go all the way around the lens here, so that no matter how you're using this, you can, in the field, you can push this button. Now you can configure what that button does with this switch. There's 3 possibilities. The first is AF lock, autofocus lock. So if you're in continuous focus mode, depending on how you have your camera set up, you can hold this button, it will lock autofocus down. Okay, so that'll lock the focus, you can take the picture. The other position on the extreme is AF on. So you could configure this button to be an autofocus on. So you could, instead of focusing with the body, you could focus by pressing the lens. So you could use this as an AF on button. And maybe you want to do that if you don't have an AF on button on the back of your camera. Some cameras don't have that. The middle position is the most interesting one, and that's the memory recall. With these lenses, and it was true, and it's the 300-8, the 200-400, the 4, 5, 600 millimeter lenses from Nikon, all those big lenses, they have a memory preset for a predefined focus distance. There's a little button right here on the barrel of the lens that's memory set. You put this switch to the middle position, you focus, and then you press this memory set button. And the lens will move a little bit, the focus will lock, and if you've got the beep turned on, there's the last little button here is a beep, so you can have it beep when it focuses. Then it'll indicate that the focus position is locked. So then you're out there taking pictures of whatever. If something, an object of interest, a subject of interest, gets onto, let's say you're focusing on a particular perch for a bird, you lock the memory preset on that perch. By pressing this button, the lens will automatically snap back to that predefined focus point, which will allow you then to quickly acquire focus on whatever's there. Sports photographers talk about locking this to second base. So they want to get a picture of the guy sliding into second base, but they're mostly focusing on other aspects of the game. Well, the guy goes to steal the base, you hit your focus recall button, pop the button, it focuses back instantly, and you can fire away and hopefully grab that action when it comes. So that's what these switches all do on the side of the lens. Okay, so if you're a wildlife photographer and you're using this lens on a tripod most of the time, there's really 2 ways to go. One is you can try to screw this threaded stud directly into your tripod head, which is kind of a pain. You can do that on some tripods. The other thing would be to get a quick release plate that mounts to the foot itself. You can do that, but then it's just another piece. The third thing, and the most elegant solution, is to replace the foot here with a custom-made foot that's already got the Arca Swiss style dovetail plate machined into it. And that's what I have here. This is the Really Right Stuff foot. It's a replacement foot for this particular lens. It's going to go right on here. And so let's install that. This has the nice dovetails built in, plus some stops, some safety stops, so that if your lens starts to slide out, it's not going to slide out of the clamp. And you can then use this foot with any of the Arca Swiss compatible clamps on a ball head, or with a Wimberley Sidekick or a Wimberley gimbal head. And that's going to be really nice when you're trying to use a large lens like this on a tripod in the field for wildlife photography. So in order to change this out, we've got a little Allen wrench here that was included with the foot, and we're just going to go in here. I'm going to unscrew these. I'm going to try not to drop everything. And we're just going to unscrew the hex nuts that are holding this foot in place. And this is intentional. These feet are designed to be removed. Recall that there is, right here, Nikon included a monopod foot that I could swap out if I so chose. Just wanted a lower profile foot. I'm going to put this one on, so let's get these screws out. Okay, so we got those screws off. Now the foot just comes off. Oh, there's actually 4 of them. I'm sorry. Let's take all the screws off. Okay, now that I've removed all 4 of these mounting screws, the original Nikon foot comes right off. Okay, and you want to put that aside, store it in your trunk case, and we're ready to install the Really Right Stuff foot. So this just goes right on here, and then we're going to reattach all 4 of the mounting screws, get those in there, and tighten them down. Okay, so once you've got all 4 screws in there, then it's a good idea to go back and make sure that you've got each one of them nicely tightened down so that you don't run into any unexpected loosening of your tripod foot in the field. That would not be good. Okay, so now we have replaced the foot. You can see that it's a little bit lower profile than the original Nikon, but not by much. This is going to still allow clearance for you to get your hand in there when you're using the lens on a tripod. Okay, so that is unboxing this 500mm lens. And again, I want to thank my friends over at Burger Brothers for having this lens not only in stock, but at a great price too. So I highly recommend you checking them out. Now, those of you who have been following my podcast for a while or follow along in the blog, you probably know that for the most part, my birding lens has been the 600mm f4 Nikon. You're probably wondering why I went out and got a 500mm Nikon. Well, I want to talk a little bit about that, especially in the context of what I'm using this lens for, which is wildlife photography. I'll start off by saying that I sold my 600mm lens and used the proceeds from that to purchase the 500mm lens. But if you're into wildlife, especially birds or smaller animals, at some point you're going to need a long lens, a telephoto lens. And by long, 300 isn't going to do it. You're going to need something 4, 5, 600 millimeters long. That's just the nature of it. Now, you can get a variety of lenses. Obviously, the manufacturer's lenses tend to be the most expensive, but I have found they also tend to be the most functional and most compatible with your cameras. Third-party lenses are good. I've used Sigma lenses. I've used Tamron lenses. They're fine, but they, as a general rule, need to reverse engineer the autofocus mechanism, whereas Nikon, Canon, they're designing their lenses to work on their cameras, and they know what future features may be enabled on cameras that don't yet exist, and these lenses will be able to support those cameras in the future. So it's just an idea, but again, a lot of money. So if you're looking for one of these lenses, the used market is a great place to look. Nikonians forums for buying and selling gear, a lot of times you'll find people selling these. So why a 500mm lens? That's really the question. And for the longest time, wildlife photographers, the 500mm lens was the way to go. And then we got into digital. Digital with crop sensor bodies before there was 35mm or full frame bodies. And with crop sensor bodies, we didn't need a 500 or a 600. In fact, sometimes that was too much lens. There's times when that's just, the angle of view is so narrow that it's too difficult to use. And so zoom lenses like the 200 to 400 were perfect on Nikon DX bodies. Canon has a 100 to 400 that's perfect focal length for their APS-C sensors as well. Then as we got into full frame cameras, we needed to get more focal length back because we no longer had that multiplier. And that was one of the driving forces for me buying a 600mm lens when I did. Now we're back to a situation where most bodies there's a lot of full frame options out there, and we have more pixels on our sensors. So if I put when I started off with Nikon with a D3, it was a 12 megapixel camera. Now I have a D810, which is a 36 megapixel camera. I also have a D4, which is a 16 megapixel camera. What that means is that I'm able to crop a little bit, in some cases extensively, like with the D810 or D800. I can still crop in and get all those pixels. Having a little bit shorter focal length for wildlife can be very useful. Couple situations. If you're shooting larger animals like elk, you don't necessarily need 500. 300 is going to be fine. But for birds, especially the larger birds, a 500 tends to be really the sweet spot of focal length because when the birds spread out their wings, you don't want to be so tightly cropped in that you cut off wings and feathers. And if you're trying to capture flying birds in flight, or biffs as they call them, having a little bit looser composition with something like a 500 or even a zoom lens is far easier. It makes it a lot easier to acquire your subject, see it out there, and then you can zoom in if you need to. So a 500 is useful focal length in today's digital camera environment. A couple other reasons why the 500 is great. I've printed out some specs here. Just did a quick lens compare over at B&H. Some specs, the 600, the 500, the 400 millimeter Nikon lenses, they're all ridiculously expensive. So price aside, one of the things that's really nice about this 500 millimeter lens is that it will focus down to 13 feet. Okay, again, I mentioned that earlier. That's kind of important. The 600 millimeter lens focuses down to just under 16 feet, 15 feet. It's 4.8 meters instead of 4 meters. Those doesn't sound like much, but those couple of feet difference can make a really big deal. It can be a real big deal when you're photographing birds, especially if you're in a blind. If you're in a hide and the bird comes in really close to you, there were times when I've been down in Texas doing my birding workshop where I couldn't get the shot because I physically could not focus my 600 millimeter lens any closer. This lens will focus a little bit closer. The other wonderful thing about the 500 millimeter lens as compared to the 6 is that it's so much smaller and lighter, so much easier to pack. A single piece slim lens hood instead of a two-piece massive carbon fiber lens hood makes packing it in your suitcase for travel a lot easier. It is also a lot lighter, and I say that tongue in cheek, but this is an 8.5 pound lens. 8.5 pounds, so that's what is that in metric? 3.87, 3.9 kilograms. That's heavy, okay? But at 8 pounds, if I hold this, it's not ridiculously unbalanced that I couldn't attempt to handhold it or use it on a monopod, whatever. I'm not going to want to do that all day. I don't have a hydraulic arm. I'm not the Terminator, but it's doable in a pinch. You compare that to the 600mm lens. That's 11 pounds, a little over 11 pounds actually, 5 kilograms. That's just huge. It's really almost impossible to even attempt to handhold that lens, VR or not. And then the 400 2.8 lens is almost the same size, at least the original, most of them are. That one's a 10-pound lens. Now Nikon does have a new 400 2.8 lens. It's beautiful. It's also $12,000, which is more expensive than even the 600mm lens. So I'm just going to leave that one out of the conversation for right now when talking about big glass. You're probably not going to buy that one. Heck, I'm not going to buy that one as much as I would love it. If you ever want to drool over an MTF chart, check out the sharpness specs of the new Nikon 400mm FL lens. It's a flat line across the chart. It's ridiculous. Anyway, all three of those lenses are excellent. They're all great. What are your options going back down to the range of mere mortals in terms of, not everybody's going to be throwing $5, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10,000 at a lens. If it's your living, it's one thing. If it's your hobby, very different. What can you do? Just want to throw out some alternative lenses instead of something like, a massive prime. If you shoot on a crop body, a Canon body, a APS-C or a Nikon DX body, then there's some really good zooms. I've already mentioned two of them. The 80-400 Nikon VR, the newer one, it's still kind of pricey. It's about $2,400, give or take. But that's a really nice lens. People have come on my birding workshops, have used that lens with, say, a D7100 body, been very happy with that lens. You could also use it with something like a D750 or even a D810 and put it in crop mode, and you'd be able to still capture 20 megapixel images and get that extra bit of reach. And it's a zoom, which sometimes is really nice for framing your subject, especially if you're working with larger wildlife or flying birds. Sometimes trying to spot your subject through one of these massive lenses is really difficult. On the Canon side, there's the 100-400, and I believe it's a f4.5 to 5.6, somewhere in there. Similar kind of thing, easy to handhold, lightweight, works well on either a crop sensor or a higher megapixel body. There's also some third-party alternatives out there. Sigma makes a, they have a, I think it's a 150 to 500, and I believe Tamron now has a, I don't remember what it is, but it goes out to 600. It's a zoom. It's a f5.6. The downside with some of those lenses, they're good optically. They tend not to have quite the clean bokeh that you would get with a prime. That nice, smooth, out of focus background. This goes for even the Nikon and the Canon lenses. The third-party lenses will sometimes, depending on the lens, they may have a maximum aperture of f6.3 at the longest end, which is going to degrade your autofocus performance a little bit, especially in lower light conditions. Now, some of that will depend on your camera, but it's just something to keep in mind. So there are alternatives out there. I used to own a Sigma 500mm f4.5 lens. It was a great lens. The only drawback it had was it didn't autofocus with the Sigma teleconverter. So, if you spend the money on the manufacturer's prime lens, you're getting a heck of a piece of glass, but that's not for everybody. So take a look at some of those other options, some of those other zooms, and in the meantime, there are other things you can do. And I want to bring up one third possibility, and this was something that just really wasn't around when I started getting into photography, and that's renting lenses. So there's a couple of companies out there online, lensrentals.com, borrowlenses.com. They are known to be reputable. They will ship you a big lens. They will rent lenses, cameras, even tripods in some cases. They will ship it to you for a specified period of time. A lens like this for a 3-day rental would probably be about $300, maybe a little less. And then you can go up from there. Now, why might you want to do that? Well, obviously the cost. If you're going to buy this lens at what it lists for $8,400, so if you're going to buy that lens to use on one trip, probably not a great idea. So if it's something that you're going to do on just once or twice, it's a lot more cost effective to rent a lens. You can also rent that lens and just see, if you like using it, if it's something you want to buy in the future. And I bring that up because, I get people asking me questions about my birding safaris. I've got 2 coming up, one in Florida in mid-April and one in Texas in mid-May. And a lot of people would love to go and sit in the blinds for 3 days down in Texas, but they don't have a long lens. They have, a 70 to 300 f5.6. It's not going to work for birds, and they don't want it. Well, consider renting a lens. You get it. You can even have it shipped in some cases to your hotel or to the destination, so you don't even have to pack it, and then you return it. It's a great way of getting access to big, expensive lenses for that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for birding or wildlife or whatever it might be. So check that out too. Until next time, this has been the Sensor Plane Photography Podcast. I'm Jason Odell. Don't forget to check out my blog at luminescentphoto.com. Thanks.